Hello everybody, my name is John of JWH Millinery and welcome back to my channel. So just a quick thank you to everybody who helped me with my subscription box survey. I am looking to launch a subscription box next year, so if you want to help me formulate that, there is a link in the description box below as well, as well as everything, so you can actually just answer your questions on subscription boxes and what you would expect. If you're new here, if this is the first video you've seen of mine, hi, I'm John. This is my channel. We talk about hats. We talk about things to do with hats. It's all millinery related anyway. So if you are new, make sure you subscribe. And for those of you that are already subscribed, hit that notification bell to be notified when I release videos in the future. They usually come out on Fridays. So yeah. And while you're down there, drop me a comment in the comments box and just hit that like, just to let me know that you liked this video and it's the sort of content you want to see in the future. We're getting into this video. So, if you've been a subscriber from the beginning, I think it was my first, maybe my second, I think it was my second, but I could be wrong, hat I ever did on this channel was a pillbox with a chunky glitter on the top. So you've probably seen it from the thumbnail anyway, so I don't know why I'm hiding it, but I thought I'd revisit that and do something similar but different. So we have this. So this has the chunky glitter again. The other one had black, this has pink. The other one had a cinema crown, side of the crown. This has cinema, but it's covered in fabric, and the fabric I've got is this lovely pleather effect. And then obviously we finished it off with some little flowers at the back, and it's lined as well. So, however, I don't go through the lining in this video. If you do want to see the lining, I've got a video going up on Patreon next week, I believe. So yeah, that's going to be Patreon only content. So yeah, if you want to see how I made this, let's get started. Okay, so first of all, we need to prepare the base. So I'm using this offcut of cinema from a previous video. And for those of you who like the colour, it is the dark dusky pink from Peachesham's, and it's part of their budget cinema range. I cut the cinema into bias strips wide enough to cover the sides of the block and cover the top and the bottom by around 1 inch. The block I am using is the MBB from Guy Moss Brown, or alternatively known as the multi-block base. Some of my strips were a little short to go around the block, but as we are layering them and covering them with fabric, it doesn't matter as long as you have it nice and tight along the edge. And then just using steam, I blocked each strip around the block and stiffened it and left it to fully dry. Whilst that was drying, I wanted to prepare the outer fabric. So I have had this for a few years now, and I've only just got around to using it. I couldn't actually remember where I got this from, so I did a little bit of internet detective work and I found it. So it is a polyester chiffon with a pleather border, and I believe it's 58 inches wide, but only the bottom 12 inches has the pleather trim. It's from a UK craft store called Minerva Crafts, and this fabric is now actually reduced to £2.99 per metre. As I've not stored it well, it was a little creased, so I spread it out on a towel and steamed it back into shape. And all I did was to pass a steaming iron over it to dampen it, and then just position the pleather into place and left this to dry. I thought I would do this now so I don't have to steam it when it's on the hat, potentially ruining the shape of the hats. Once the cinema was dry, I removed it from the block and cut away any excess cinema, leaving just under 1 inch. This was then sewn down with some covered millinery wire inserted into the fold. Next, I covered the base with some thick interfacing. You could use batting or felt. You just really need to use something which will smooth the edges so you don't see the harsh edges when you cover with fabric, which I'm going to be doing next. But before we cover it, just cut away any excess interfacing on the inside. The pleather section actually had a top part which was just plain chiffon, but I did cut this off a while ago, and I did have some of it still in my fabric pile, so I used this to cover the sides of the hat. I cut it on the bias so it would curve around nicely. I then sewed it down using some matching thread, and you can see the end of the fabric is visible, but we'll be covering this anyway, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Ideally, if you can, try and get this towards like the back of the hat. I didn't, sadly, but if you can, try. As we've added thickness to the hat, I measured the outside circumference so I could cut the correct length of pleather trim. Block is 22.5 inches circumference, I believe, but the new circumference is 23.5 inch. So I measured out the trim and ensured I had enough full segments to go around the hat. I cut each of the strips so the backing chiffon wasn't visible from underneath the trim, but had enough above the trim to sew it to the hat. However, with one of the strips I did cut it so there was enough fabric at both the top and the bottom from the stitching line to enable me to sew it down at the top of the hat. With that strip, I pinned that along the top of the hat and I sewed that into place. So my stitches were under the trim so you couldn't see them. As you can see, I had enough fabric at the top of the trim to cover the edge of the hat and meet the stitches that were coming through from underneath the trim. And if this doesn't make sense, just watch me do it, because trying to explain this was a little bit of a nightmare. Before I placed the rest of the trim though, I wanted to get the tip of the crown in. So I cut a piece of interfacing which matched the block and ironed it to this gorgeous chunky glitter fabric from JWH Millinery. Now I did look at their website today, so I'm recording this on the Wednesday, and they only had it in red, so they only have, like, just bear that in mind. I cut around the interfacing, leaving an inch seam allowance, and I cut into the seam allowance so it would sit around the curve better. To place it into the hat, I put it in from the bottom with the glitter fabric facing out. This means that the seam allowance, in theory, would have resistance against the inside of the hat, and you can just adjust this as you go. However, it is a little tricky to do, so when you have a segment in place, pin it down and then just adjust another section. And it did actually take me 3 attempts to do this, so please just keep persevering. Once you've got it in place, sew it to the hat, hiding the stitches under where the trim sits. And now you can carry on and just add the rest of the trim to the outside of the hat. What I did though is I offset the trim slightly to give the hat some dimension. I went ahead and placed a lining and sewed the edge of the lining to the bottom of the hat with a blanket stitch. If you want to see how I do linings, I've got a video coming up on Patreon next week, so go and sign up to see that. The link is in the description box below. Then I added some ribbon to the bottom of the hat to serve as the bottom trim and the ribbon inside the hat. Finish, I used some of the pleather trim and made some cute little flowers with some of the chunky glitter fabric as the centre of the flower, and these were arranged at the centre back of the hat to give the hat some height when worn tipped forward, as this hat is designed to be. Now sometimes the petals will flop over on themselves, so one thing that you could do is just put a tiny dot of glue of some description on the back of the petals and just hold them together so then the petals don't flop away from each other. And also this means that you'll see less of the back of the petal than you will of the yellow at the front. So there you go. Slightly convoluted at times, that is blocking out my light. You know, there was a lot of steps, but I think it looks really nice. It's kind of giving the kind of 70s vibes, 60s, 70s vibes. I don't know why, but that's what I'm getting from this. So yeah, all my social media and links to everything that I can find is in the description box as well as the link to my subscription box survey. So if you would like to fill out, please do so. So click this top video for a video that I think you're going to like, and click this video here for a video that YouTube thinks you're going to like. This top video is my last video, so it's my Ruby video. So if you didn't catch last week's video, here is the link to watch that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.